Alright, let's talk about a movie called Look Both Ways. This might get a little confusing because it's two different stories. So we got a girl named Nattie and a guy named Gabe. They've been best friends for a long time in school. Nattie's got this 5-year plan and she wants to do animation for movies. And Gabe has got this job being a musician, a drummer in a band. But he's got a major gig lined up. So they both want to celebrate their careers, and bottom line is they end up giving each other the business. Next thing we know, they all go to this party or whatever. Gabe's doing this drumming thing at the party. Meanwhile, Nattie and her best friend's car is in the bathroom. Now she's been throwing up and all this shit, right? Sounds like she's pregnant, right? They said they used a condom, all that good shit. So Sierra got us some pregnancy tests, right? Cara, my bad. Now here's where the story splits into two different stories. Now her dream is to do some animation stuff in LA. But if she's pregnant, she ain't gonna be able to do that shit. So it breaks off into one scenario where she is pregnant and one scenario where she isn't. So for now, for the rest of the movie, we have the what if scenario and the what could be scenario and the what really is scenario. So she's pregnant, she tells Gabe the situation, Gabe's gonna be there for her every step of the way. The scenario where she's not pregnant, she gets some drinks and gets it popping. She rides home with Gabe and they gotta tell their parents the news. Her parents start flipping out. The other scenario, she rides with Cara and they end up going to LA. From this point on, I'm gonna tell the pregnant scenario first. They end up getting along, having a baby, everything's all good and gravy. Now in this scenario, Cara went by herself to LA. Nattie's been feeling miserable because of her hormones and everything like that. And this is all before she had the baby. So after they had the baby, everything's doing all fine. The baby's named Rosie, by the way, it's a girl. So everything's good, they co-parent and all that good shit. But it gets to a point, Gabe gets his own apartment, which is a nice apartment, don't get it wrong. And he wants Nattie to come live there with her. The problem is, Nattie wasn't ready for all that, she was still staying at her mom's house. Then she basically tells him it's on a friendship level. She basically goes out there and tells him to go date and do shit. I'm like, really? Rosie's 3 at this point. So after a while, the crazy thing is, he decides to do that. He meets this chick named Miranda, and it gets to the point where he's about to propose to her. Now let's go to the non-pregnancy scenario. Cara and Nattie get themselves settled in LA. She tries to find a job with this lady by the name of Lucy, because I guess she does big stuff. That's like her idol in animation or something like that. But she's scared to go in the venue, but she ends up meeting this dude by the name of Jake. Jake gets her confidence up, but unfortunately, Lucy's not at the event. Jake is like, she's too big of a star to come here. She's not gonna be at these events. But Jake gives her all the encouragement and stuff like that. So when she goes to the interview the next day, she ends up seeing Jake there. Come to find out he actually works for Lucy, so there you go. So when she goes to see Lucy, it turns out it's actually Nia Long. I didn't even know Nia Long was in this movie. She got her creative skills popping and she got the job getting it going. She been running errands for the time being, but eventually she's gonna get her animations there to Lucy. Meanwhile, while all this time is going, she's been getting closer to Jake. They end up start dating. They're thinking about getting apartments, but at the same time, Jake has got this little internship that's about to come through. The problem is, it ends up being in Nova Scotia, and he could probably be out there to possibly 6 months to a year. And randomly throughout all this time, Cara ends up dating this chick that's been yelling at her from the top floor and shit. Small enough, but I just felt like I need to add it in. Anyway, so we go back to Nattie actually having the kid scene. Rosie's probably about 7 at this time now. She ends up going to see her best friend Cara in LA because she was able to take a trip. She goes up there with a friend to have brunch. She's going to get some drinks and she ends up bumping into this dude, ends up being Jake. But this is not the same timeline. After the brunch thing, the next day she wakes up on the couch. She tries to call Gabe, who's not even home and can't answer his phone. I guess she had called the house phone to talk to Rosie because Rosie was in the house chilling. But she was in there with some chick named Jessie. I guess she's supposed to be the babysitter or something, but Nattie got pissed off. So because she couldn't reach Gabe, she's like, yeah, I gotta go home, back home to Texas. Cara's like, man, you just got here, what's good? When she goes back home, she has this whole big argument with Gabe, and Gabe was like, Jessie is Miranda's sister. And Miranda's the girl that he's, dealing with, that actually about to marry. She was paranoid about that shit, but clearly she didn't want to know anything about Miranda. So we go back in a non-pregnancy timeline. Lucy talks to her about her animations or her characters and say they're not really inspired. Talking about she's got to find her voice, not everybody else's. So I don't know if she convinced her to quit to find her voice or she just got fired. So basically, without a job, she's trying to talk to Jake, and Jake is all halfway across the world. She's pissed off and Jake can barely get reception. So it gets to a point where they kind of break up. So we'd see one scenario where Nattie dropped off Rosie and she ended up coming back home to her people's house. Then we see another scenario where Nattie's coming back and she has to come back home to her people's house from LA. So in both timelines, they're both working on their drawings. And in both timelines, their drawings get accepted as some type of panels. One panel is a bunch of drawings that were actually inspired by Rosie. And on the panel, she's talking to a bunch of different people, including Lucy. Keep in mind, she didn't work for Lucy in this timeline. You see how all the characters are intertwining with each other? I know it's hard to follow with me, but bear with me on this. So in the Rosie timeline, Nattie goes to see Gabe perform. Turns out he ended up breaking up with Miranda. It didn't work out. And it's basically a shot for Nattie and Gabe to get back together. So Nattie is so tired of just pushing Gabe away, and Gabe is like, finally, you already know what time it is. Now in the LA timeline, after the panel, Nattie has her animated showing, and it turns out Gabe was actually playing for the spot. In this timeline, Gabe has been married to Miranda for a couple years, and they about to have a baby. So after the panel was pretty much over, Nattie goes outside, and she ends up seeing Jake around the corner trying to get a ticket. He was trying to surprise her because he still should have been in Nova Scotia. And then Nattie and Jake get back together. So then they show both timelines coming together at the same time, right? Now both versions of Nattie are walking past this house, the house where the party happened, and both versions go upstairs and go up to the bathroom. Then we see her just sitting on the toilet like she's about to take these pregnancy tests again. And then both versions come back out and leave with their significant others. So we're thinking to ourselves the entire time, was she pregnant or wasn't she? I'm not even sure that was the goal in this movie. I think the goal was more so showing how her life would have been had she had a kid, or how her life would have been had she not had a kid. But it didn't really give one definitive direction that really took place. I guess this is why it's called Look Both Ways, right? Anyway, check it out on Netflix. I promise you it makes more sense if you watch it.